As you can see, it is all about you unleashing the power of personal branding, subtitled Things You Can Do Within a Week to Start to Grow Your Brand. And I will preface this by saying this entire talk is a do as I say, not as I did, because it took me a really long time to get where I am because I didn't know any of these things beforehand, and I failed my way into a lot of success. So hopefully I can help you avoid some of the pitfalls that I did or just the steps that I missed along the way. So the first question is, why should you even think about personal branding? I gave a version of this talk for the first time at an internal lunch and learn at my company. And when I proposed that I teach a class on personal branding, you can imagine that perhaps some of the leadership team thought I was trying to teach people how to leave the company. Because you grow your personal brand and people notice you and then perhaps try to poach you. But the truth of the matter is that even within your own company, growing your personal brand is so important. Number one, for upward mobility, and also for opportunities to maybe be on a podcast, be invited to other spaces, give talks, and just become a recognized expert in your field. It has also helped me grow the Stellar WP brand because with me running social and me having that behind my name and having the name that I've grown in WordPress, I bring Stellar with me everywhere I go. So instead of saying to me, Michelle, stop doing all the things that you do in WordPress, it's like, as long as you have our name after what you do, we're loving it, right? So you can continue to use anything that you grow on your personal brand to also assist the company that you work with growing theirs, as long as you continue to put those things in the same place. So let's talk about the things that you can do. I will make these slides available, so if you want to take pictures, you're welcome to, but there's literally like 30 slides with a bunch of stuff on it. I promise I will share these all out later. I think I even have a PDF or something I'll put online. Anyway, I have always talked about the power of the favicon. Now, I don't know, I think there are people today who are creating websites who don't even know what a favicon is because they don't call it that anymore. But if you don't know, it's that tiny little image that's in the tab at the top of your browser. And when I was first building in WordPress, you didn't add that through the customizer because there wasn't a customizer when I first started using WordPress. So you had to upload it into a special file. It had to be called like, what was it called, .ico or something like that, if I remember correctly. I'm seeing lots of heads nod, that's a good sign. And it was literally a 16 by 16 pixel image. And if you didn't have, like right now you can upload anything and it'll just kind of squish it into what it thinks is best. But you had to upload a 16 by 16 pixel image. If it was 17 by 17, it did not work. And there are websites that probably still exist that you could upload your image and you could adjust pixel by pixel what it looked like, hit a button, and it would show you what it's going to render like in that tiny little bit of format. Why is a favicon important? Because if you're like me, you have 50 tabs open all at once. And if you want to be able to recognize your tab, then you're going to have something in that tab that shows what it is. How many of you have looked at tabs and you see the Facebook icon, you see the Twitter icon, and then you see a whole bunch of what looks like a WordPress globe? And you don't know what any of those WordPress globes are because you have so many tabs open, all you see is the image, not the site title. Well, that's because those people failed to put a favicon on their website. Don't be like them. Be like Michelle. Put a lovely little favicon at the top of your site. So the favicon, I used to call it the cherry on the website sundae. So if your website is full of amazing things, why wouldn't you put the cherry on top and add that tiny little 16 by 16 pixel piece of branding at the top? So create a favicon. If you go to my website, which is meetmichelle.online, you will see a teeny tiny little image of my headshot. And even though if you look at it, you wouldn't necessarily know who it is, if you've ever seen my headshot, then you'd be like, that purple hair, I recognize that purple hair. And so that tiny little favicon is worthwhile investing in that. And you can still create them pixel by pixel if you want, But WordPress does a really nice job, and your theme is where that usually comes in through the customizer, does a really nice job of creating that favicon for you. So start with the tiniest little bit of real estate. And then standardize your headshot. Now, I'm not going to call out anybody in the room, because I haven't looked at your headshots in a while, but while there is one person in this room whose headshot is them as a child, however, they use that everywhere. And even though it may not look like who they are today, it's branded. And I know every time I see that child face, I know exactly who that is. And so they're using it consistently everywhere. For a while, I was using a headshot that was 15 years old, and I had red dyed hair, and I looked a lot different because 15 years ago I was 40 years old versus 55 years old, and it makes a difference. And so I realized that I really needed to get some new headshots done. So a year and a half ago, I got brand new headshots done, and then a month and a half later, I chopped off all my hair. So if you look at those headshots now, they don't look exactly like I look today. It's going to cost money to do it again, I promise I will, but the same smiling face, the same glasses, same purple hair, just a little bit shorter. But I used those, there's two headshots from the same exact photo shoot, and so no matter which one of those you see, it's undeniably Michelle Frechette. And so I suggest that you get some headshots done. You can spend a lot of money. Or you can go out with an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever and have a friend do a really nice picture of you, because our cell phones take beautiful photos now. Just make sure it really captures who you think you are and who you want to portray to the world, and then use that headshot consistently. And if it's a childhood photo, use it, but use it consistently so that when people see it, they go, I know exactly who that is, and I know whose work I'm looking at. And you know who you are in this room, and we'll talk later. Just kidding. And this one is the bane of my existence. I will fight anybody who says that you should write your bio in the first person. When you write your bio, perhaps on your own website, is the only time to consider putting it in the first person. But when you go to look at all the bios of the speakers at WordCamp Asia, WordCamp Europe, something where there's like 50 speakers, and you come across one that's written in the first person, it just doesn't hit the same as one that's written in the third person, because a website is supposed to talk about you, not you first person. So I always recommend to everybody, your bio should be written in the third person. The other thing that writing it in the third person does is it allows you to brag a little bit about the work you do without it sounding like you bragging about the work that you do. So when it says, Michelle was called the busiest woman in WordPress by Matt Mullenweg, it's way different than I say, I was called the busiest woman in WordPress by Matt Mullenweg, right? So it doesn't sound like bragging, it's like, it's factual. It's factual either way, but it sounds as though somebody else wrote it about me. They didn't. I wrote my own bio. But it sounds better coming in the third person. Now, I will tell you, if you have difficulty writing your own bio because you think it feels like bragging, hire somebody. Hire somebody if you can afford it, and there are people that will work from anywhere from $25 to $30 to $300, $400 to write your bio. And sometimes you get what you pay for, but sometimes those people who are charging $50 for a bio are incredibly good writers just looking for a little extra side cash. You give them the basics, bullet points, maybe meet with them and tell them a little bit about yourself. Within a week, they've written a bio about you that makes you blush about yourself. But now somebody else has said those words about you, and you didn't have to say them about yourself. Because you have to get over your own ego, and I mean that in almost like the negative way, not like I'm bragging, but I'm afraid to brag, right? So you get over your own ego a little bit, let somebody say really nice things about you, and it feels easier to put it on the web when somebody else said it. But if you can say it in the third person, it says the same thing. So you can totally do that yourself too. But write your bio in the third person. So wherever you put it, it's writing about you and not you writing. Make sure your WordPress.org profile is up to date. It's all lowercase there because it's a website, folks, so don't get on me about lowercase WMP. I'll fix it for the next slideshow, I promise. But make sure your WordPress.org profile is up to date because people look there. So if somebody's looking to hire you and they're looking for your WordPress.org profile and all they see is the shadow of a person because it's a placeholder image, and your username, which may or may not actually be your name, because it isn't always, right? You can pick whatever you want. That does not help anyone know anything about you. Now, if you haven't done anything in the WordPress community, it says even less. If you have done things in the WordPress community, those things are going to show up. So if you have badges, you've earned badges by speaking at WordCamps or organizing WordCamps or contributing to the photo directory, those badges are still going to be there. But if you've taken that third-person bio and you've put it there, and you've listed some of the things you've done and some of the show talks and things already, but like all those things, you have so much control over putting what's in that bio. Now, is mine a little over the top? Yep. Mine shows, because I want people to go there and see she's worth having on our stage. Look at all the talks she's given. Look at all the work she's done. I can trust that she is who she says she is and she does the work that she says she does. So I build that out as though it were any other bio anywhere, and I make it, you don't have to read it, but if you want to, you can see everything that there is to know about me. Now, if I was looking for a job, Liquid Web, if you're listening, I'm not, but if I was, that is also another place that a WordPress company is going to be able to go and see what have I contributed to open source, what kinds of work am I doing in the community, and what am I saying about the work that I do for the company that I work for too, and how am I pushing them forward, and how am I saying that I work there? Am I proud of the work that I do there, or have I not put it there at all? And so take the time to really build out your WordPress.org profile. In WordPress itself, it's going to be something that really helps you in the long run. Not everybody is comfortable thinking about contributing to the open source project that is WordPress, but you can. You can join an organizing team, an ongoing team that we have. You can join a release squad. So I am not a coder. I have a plugin in the repo, which makes it feel like I am, but I just ripped off Hello Dolly. And that's legal. You can do that. They let you. They encourage it. But I'm not a coder. And so for years of contributing to, or being in WordPress, I thought that to join the open source project at all, I would have to know how to code. It turns out that only a small part of the open source project is actually coding. There are so many teams that you can be on. I joined marketing first, and I was on the marketing team, and that was like, I sat at a marketing table on contributor day, and I don't get that, that imposter syndrome very much, and I'm clearly not shy or afraid, but I sat there feeling so out of my element because I didn't know what contributor day was and what it meant to contribute. At the end of that day, I vowed I would never miss another contributor day of any WordCamp I went to. I was excited to join Slack and see all the things that were happening and realize that my voice might be one out of millions, but it's still valid. And I still bring a point of view, and there are ways that I can contribute that are positive and helpful moving forward. Since that day, sitting at a contributor table, I am now on the teams for community. I am a mentor for this camp, for example, and mentoring camps is one of the things you can do in community. I organize WordCamps. I speak at WordCamps clearly. I speak at WordCamps, not I speak at WordCamps clearly, because I do get really muddled sometimes. But I speak at WordCamps. I have contributed. I'm on the photo moderation team, so if you submit a photo to wordpress.org/photos, because you all have the ability to do that, I may be the one that says yes or no to whether or not your photo gets approved, or pushed back and like, hey, add a better description, or any of those things. So contributing to open source, I have done that. I've been on a release squad. I've done all of that without coding anything in WordPress. And so you can contribute that way. And that's one way for you to start to be known. Because when it comes to personal branding, it's not about just sitting home and doing nothing, right? It's about actually being involved in the community. And if it's not the WordPress community, it's the tech community. When I was working in higher education, it was the higher education community. So it's all of those things, getting known by being in the places where things are happening. And so I encourage you to think about how you could, even small ways, start to join some of those opportunities to volunteer and to contribute. And then, have I talked about bio enough? I'm going to say it one more time. Add it to all your socials. So Twitter, X, whatever, only gives you like 280 characters to put your bio. So you have to be really judicious in what you include there. LinkedIn says, hey, take all the space you need. Facebook's like, yeah, whatever, right? So wherever it is, I think Mastodon gives you like 500 characters. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, 500 characters. And so you really do have an opportunity to include a lot of the things that you do in the world and put in those spaces. When I go to somebody's, so I get people following me on Twitter, for example, a lot. If I don't know them, the first thing I do is go and look at their profile. And if their profile has nothing in it, I don't follow back because I don't know who they are and there's not necessarily contributing to anything that I want to learn about. But if they put in their profile what they're doing with WordPress, the company they work for, I'll be like, oh, I've heard of that company. I'll follow them back. And then we can become mutuals on those different places. So add your bio to your socials, and then make sure that your website, if you have one, which you should have one, you have a link out to that as well. So like I have Meet Michelle. I have two websites. I have meetmichelle.online, which has been around for a couple of years. Brand new website. Please don't judge it yet. There's no SEO on it yet. But michelleverchette.com has just recently been completed. Well, completed as somebody else helped me build what is there. Anyway, because I don't have time to build my own website, and I don't know how to build my own website. But seriously, though, link out to those places so that if people want to learn more about you, they hit that bio, and they can click over to your website. A couple years ago, on a Friday night, I was super bored, and I just posted on Twitter, hey, for the next couple hours, I will do one of 4 things if you reply. I will roast you, I will write a haiku about you, I will give you a compliment, or I will write a limerick about you. Pick one of those things. And so people, like way more people than I expected on a Friday night, started saying, hey, roast me, or hey, do this. And the only way, if I didn't know them, was to go to their bio and find information there. If they had a website, I could click through there and discover a little bit more about them. But when there was nothing to figure out, I had to like get really resourceful on how to reply to that. So like, I know that's a very, very like niche kind of idea, but it was so cool to learn more about people because they had information there. Apply or ask to speak on podcasts, or guest post on blogs, or do webinars. I have several podcasts, some of you know that. I am constantly looking for people to interview on my podcasts. Now, people are always afraid to ask because they think that podcasters are going to go and ask them. We don't know everybody we should be asking, and quite honestly, we're busy people too. So if I don't know who to interview next, I love it if somebody either hits up the website or DMs me and be like, hey, I'd like to be on WP Coffee Talk. Cool, here's the space, let's get it scheduled. I want you to be on the show. I've only got 5 people recorded so far, and after that, I've got nothing coming. So yeah, so come be on my podcast. And I'm not the only one that thinks about that, right? I will say this. If somebody says that you need to pay to be on their podcast, turn around and walk away, because that is not, yeah, Seth has a podcast too, so he knows. But there are people who will ask you to pay to be on their podcast. You are their resource. Now, I don't pay my guests, and most people don't pay their guests. It's mutual. You're getting something, I'm getting something, and we both benefit. But you should never have to pay to do that. But go ahead and apply to be on podcasts. Ask people like, hey, I see you take guest posts. Can I guest post on your blog? For companies and things like that, right? And then also if there's webinar series, if there's summits that are happening online, ask if you can be involved. If the answer is no, what did you lose? Nothing. If the answer is yes, you've gained an entire opportunity. I realize I've got a lot of these, so I'm going to keep moving. And then if you don't know what to write about, if you don't know who to ask to be on their podcast, if you're not sure, listen to WordPress podcasts to listen, like, what are people talking about? How can I contribute to that conversation? And then hit up their contact forms. I'm like, hey, I'd like to be on your podcast. Go to wppodcast.com. That's owned by Hero Press. And so they have RSS feeds from so many WordPress podcasts. And so you can listen in there and you can kind of get an idea of who is still running. Some of them are like people, they get tired of their podcast after a while and they close them down, right? So there might be listed, but you can see who's active in the RSS feed there. And so you'll know who's talking and who's looking for guests and opportunities, and then ask them. Just say, hey, I have this, I know this, I'd like to be included. And I bet that a lot of people will say, absolutely, here's the calendar, figure out when you can come in and talk to us. And then engage in social media discussions. Whether your favorite platform is Twitter, or your favorite platform is Mastodon or Threads. I don't know, does anybody actually use Threads yet? Okay, cool. So maybe it's Threads then for you. I'm not on there much. I have an account because you had to claim it to get it, but I don't think I've posted there yet. But there's active discussions happening, right? So talk to people. Sometimes it's hard to think of something to post. It's not usually hard to think of things to reply. And so if there's a conversation happening, somebody posts something interesting, reply to it. Sometimes people just reply to mine with an emoji, or they'll reply with a counter thought, like they don't agree with what I have to say. Whatever it is, now we've started to have a conversation. And then other people start to join in. So it's a way for you to stay relevant, but also for people to be seen, for you to be seen by people, and to have these conversations going. So if you engage in social media discussions, it helps grow your personal brand because you are being seen by more people with an opinion that matters. And now you have become more relevant. I post a lot of silly stuff. Feel free to engage with it anytime. Not just to improve my algorithm, but because it's fun. And so when people, especially if people post polls, I love when people post polls. You can just click it. Nobody knows who answered it. So go ahead and reply in the comments why you picked what you picked, because that's where the conversations happen. People love polls because it's really easy, one click and you've given your response. But if you tell why you picked what you picked, you are 100% bound to start a conversation, not only with the person who posted it, but with other people who are engaging and watching that poll too. So polls are my secret weapon all the time. And stay informed on WordPress news. So there is so much happening, right? You could subscribe to every blog and never, ever get through this week's by the end of the year of all the information that could come to you. So where do you look for that information? There isn't one right place. The right place is the place that speaks to you and what you do. I'm not a developer. I am not a subscribe to developer newsletters because it's all over my head when that comes to me. But I do subscribe to things about the community, overall arching things like the repository and this weekly WP, and I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but so many great newsletters out there. Subscribe to the ones that make sense to you and then read them. Read them once a week. I am the executive director of Post Status. I send out a newsletter every Monday for Post Status. And we have different people that contribute to that newsletter. So maybe you don't care about my section, but maybe you really care about what Nathan Ingram's writing about. So read that section of that newsletter and then move on. But reading those things in everybody's newsletter helps you know what people are talking about. And then also go to the news section of WordPress.org, because what's happening specifically with the open source project is going to be there. Josepha has a podcast that she talks about what's going on in WordPress there. And that feed will actually kind of keep you up to date on what's happening with release squads, et cetera. So those are just some of the few places that you can think about. But staying informed on WordPress news lets you be relevant, gives you those things to talk about on social, gives you those ideas to present at podcasts and conferences and WordCamps and all of the things. And staying informed is what will help you be able to represent yourself better in the community. And then follow 5 new people or businesses, accounts. Follow 5 new accounts across social channels every week. It doesn't have to be 5 in every channel. Maybe it's 1 in Twitter and it's 2 in Threads and it's 1 on Mastodon. Whatever it is, find things that are relevant to you. Maybe search a hashtag for a specific topic. Or maybe somebody you follow has engaged in conversation with somebody else and you like what they're saying. Follow them. You can always unfollow people if you discover that you don't really care for what they have to say. But to grow your network means that you have to follow people in order for them to know who you are and follow you back. So I will tell the embarrassing story that when I signed up for Twitter a long time ago, I think I was still working in higher ed at the time, so I wasn't even in WordPress yet. All these people were following me. And by all these people, maybe 25 at the time. And I was like, woohoo, that's pretty cool. And my daughter said, how come you're only following 0 people? I'm like, well, I didn't know who to follow. She's like, dummy, you follow the people that follow you. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. I never thought, I've come a long way in the last 20 years, I promise. But the idea is, if you follow those people, they are also likely to follow you back. And so you can pick and choose, of course, who you choose to follow, who you unfollow. Sometimes people say things you don't agree with consistently, and you don't need that negativity in your life, so you go right ahead and unfollow those people. But over the last, well, since 2019, I've gone from 1,200 followers to 17,700 followers in just a few years. And that's because I engage. That's because I put out content that people want to read. That's because I follow people that I want to follow, and I have conversations publicly with people about different things. And I share the best memes. I'm just going to say it. So there it is. But seriously, following the right people and putting it out there, creating content that people want to see. Podcasts like I have are really a good way to do that. And then just the work that you do in the community, whether you're speaking at a WordCamp and talking about those kinds of things. Those are the things that people are interested in. You follow those people, and I promise that a percentage of those people are going to follow you back. And I don't follow 17,000 people, I'm not going to lie. I follow about almost 5,000 people because there's a lot of people who aren't saying anything. They're just retweeting other people, and I'm not going to follow that. There's a lot of bots that follow me, and I don't weed those out because I don't have time for that. But I have grown that network in such a way that people want to hear what I have to say. They unfollow me too sometimes when they think I'm just a silly meme girl, whatever. But that's one way that you can really start to grow, is by following other people and grow your network that way. And I think this is super important. Create for yourself a value or mission statement, your public persona, right? It is true to, my public persona is true to who I am. What you see is what you get with me for the most part. Do I have a private life that I don't bring out into the world too? Of course I do. I have innermost thoughts. I have things that I don't share every living thought with everybody. But what you see here is not fake Michelle. What you see here is authentic Michelle with a nicer shirt, because I don't dress this nice at home. But seriously, it's one of those things that you really have to create who you want to be publicly. The parts of you that you want people to engage with, that's the part that you create your value and mission statement for. And then keep that in top of mind in all that you do. You will almost never, notice I say almost because I don't usually speak in extremes, but you will almost never see me post negativity in any of my social channels. And that's because I try to put kindness and empathy out into the world. And who I am at my core is the person that helps others and has kindness and empathy for other people. Do other people annoy the heck out of me sometimes? Of course. Of course. Because we are human beings. But if that person is super annoying, I mute them. I don't engage in it, and I certainly don't speak ill of them. Because I don't want people to speak ill of me, and I don't want people to be putting out negativity toward me. And so I have my persona that I always put at top of mind for everything is anything I put out into the world publicly needs to be uplifting or at the very least neutral. Because I don't want the negativity to come back to me. So everything you see that I do in public and everything that you see that I do in the WordPress community is always to try to help other people. Because at my core, that's who I am. So whoever you are, whatever you're striving to do, put that at top of mind and have that be that inner voice before you hit publish on anything that you might have to delete or think about or regret later. And if who you are is that negative person, go for it. That's your persona. It's just not me. And you know who you are. I don't really. Anyway, add cover photos to your socials that match that persona. So how often do you look at people's Twitter accounts? I do. Like if you say something to me or you follow me, I am looking at your account. And if it's just a giant gray box over you, I wonder if you're really that committed to engagement on that platform, because it doesn't say anything about you. Now, I change mine out frequently. I'm a nature photographer. I love changing it out for whatever picture I took. I think right now it's Niagara Falls. I could be wrong. I take a lot of pictures of birds. I think they're beautiful. I take a lot of pictures of deer and flowers, and that matches who I am, right? I put out that positive and that nature and whatever. So I put those things on my Twitter profile. I put them on my Facebook profile. I think I put them on my LinkedIn profile. That might be a picture of me speaking somewhere because it's professional, right? but have a cover photo. It doesn't have to be the most amazing picture you've ever seen, but put something that speaks to you and speaks about you. And then, if you have a website, I don't care if your website is quote unquote just, I don't like the word just, but if it's only for having a portfolio of your work, have a page that is your media kit. Again, do as I say, not as I do, because I haven't finished developing mine yet. Parenthesis caveat. It's coming. But you should have them, and I do. If you go to underrepresentedintech.com, you hit that media button, you'll see our logo in various sizes. You'll see some sound bites about us. You'll see my bio and Samah's bio and Ali's bio. So you learn about, for media, what is Underrepresented in Tech all about. For your personal site, if you are developing a personal site, you should have your headshot on there. You should have your bio on there. Maybe a thought or two, something that's quotable that you've said or done. Some of the body of your work. If you've been on podcasts or you've spoken publicly, some of the highlights from some of those things, put links out to those. If I'm looking to invite somebody on my podcast, like, you can come to me, great, but if I have to go searching, I'm not just going to ask somebody I don't know anything about. I'm going to hit up their website. I'm going to see what they say about themselves and the work that they're doing in order to invite them to be part of my space. And so I want that to be something that you do too, so that people can look and see who you are and learn a little bit more about yourself. Whether you call it a media kit or something else, is kind of like labeling it, I don't care what the label is, but have something on your website that really shows who you are as a person. Maybe it's just your about page, right? So you're calling it about, it's your about page. But make it so that people can clearly see who you are and pick up pieces. Like when I have to publish a podcast, if I haven't gotten a bio from somebody, I'm searching for that bio. And I go to LinkedIn first, and so many people don't have a bio on LinkedIn. That's another thing. Make sure your bio, I said that already, put your bio on LinkedIn. But I'm looking all over for that. So if it's on your website, if it's clearly stated, if I can lift that and just put it in that section of my website, I'm really happy about that. If you're building out a media kit, or your bio, or your headshots, whatever it is, have somebody else look at that for you. And I'll tell you why. Because you, maybe not everybody, I certainly did, always feel like I'm putting too much, I'm bragging, I'm doing these things, and I don't want people to think I have this giant ego in it. But people are looking for that information about you to include in whatever you're included in. So have somebody else read it to make sure it's accurate about you. You haven't left out any things. We tend to fill in gaps in our head and forget that other people just don't know things about us. So make sure that that's been read over by somebody else, especially because they'll find your typos and your misspellings. And there's nothing more embarrassing than somebody picking up your bio and you've misspelled your own last name. I'm not saying it happened to me, but I'm not saying it didn't either. So make sure that somebody reads that over for you. Just like if you're submitting a talk for a WordCamp, I always have somebody read it over for me because I see my typos as correctly spelled because that's what I wrote, even though I misspelled it accidentally. So I always have somebody read things over for you. And remember, the red squiggly line doesn't apply if the word you mistype is actually a word, right? So for and fro, anybody? Yeah. And then inventory your media placements and put them on your website. So I will say I have been on a lot of podcasts over the years. I do not have an exhaustive list anywhere of every single episode of every podcast I've been on because nobody wants to read through that. Pick 5. Pick 5 guest posts that you've done. Pick 5 podcasts that you were so excited that you really felt good about how you looked on there. And put those in your media kit so that if somebody wants to hear you talk and hear what you sounded like, they can click through and hear that. If they want to see how you write, they can click through and see that so that they have an idea of your level of professionalism when it comes to those things. And then put those on your media kit too. And this one is super important. Look for networking opportunities. So when I was freelancing before I joined GiveWP in 2018, I freelanced for 5 years, and finding customers was difficult. So I joined a local networking group similar to BNI, but we started our own, so it didn't cost us $700 a year. And so we did something that's like that, where every seat has only one person. So I was the only marketer / web designer in the group. And everybody who had a referral for web design came to me, and I was able to keep my business going. That also helped me learn my craft. It also helped me learn about things that I could speak at WordCamps. It also helped me develop my ability to stand up and give an elevator pitch, talk about what I do, and it gave me all of those opportunities practically free to be able to kind of have those networkings to build my business. Within WordPress, nobody in the WordPress community has hired me to build their websites because y'all do that for yourselves. So instead, I was always looking for other opportunities. So I joined a local meetup. So I now organize my local meetup, but at the time, I just joined my local meetup and learned about those kinds of things. Went to WordCamps. I go to WordCamps just as an attendee sometimes and just enjoy meeting people and learning about what the community's doing, especially in different parts of the world. Then there's things like Post Status, the admin bar. There's other Facebook groups that are more niche, like when I was building almost exclusively with Divi, there's a Divi Facebook group. And you could just go to that Facebook group and learn from each other there. All of our plugins at Stellar have Facebook groups. And if you want to learn how to use the product better or see what other people are doing, you join those Facebook groups. So there's Facebook groups, there's is it Twitch? Am I saying that right? Twitch, I don't know why I always have a mental block on that. There's Twitch groups for different things. There's Slack groups for different things. You kind of have to figure out where the groups are. Just ask somebody, right? And there's advanced WordPress groups. There's beginner use. I mean, there's every part of the spectrum of WordPress groups everywhere. So get involved in some of those groups and contribute to the conversation there and learn from people there too. Those are wonderful networking opportunities. And then maybe public speaking terrifies you. There are people I know, there's an old joke that Jerry Seinfeld said that so many people are afraid of public speaking, they'd rather be in the casket than give the eulogy. And I know there are people who, the idea of standing up on a stage in front of other people or sitting on a stage in front of other people is absolutely terrifying. So that's not what you want to do necessarily, but maybe you want to start to learn that a little bit. What are some ways that you can gain confidence in those areas that are scary to you? So for example, if you are terrified of public speaking, Toastmasters, join Toastmasters. Because Toastmasters will give you experiences that will terrify you and help you work through them, right? So it's a little bit of a trial by fire in a way, right? But they'll give you a safe environment to do that. Maybe you're afraid to get up on a stage and give a talk at a WordCamp, but maybe your local meetup is a small group and you want to just try to explain something, give a lightning talk, explain something that you are learning there. You can also hire a coach, right? So I used to coach somebody who was so afraid to ask a question in our meetup because she was so shy. Within a year, she gave a talk at WordCamp Ottawa. So we were able to work through some of those fears of hers and give her opportunities to gain confidence and understand that her point of view and what she had to say was valuable and other people would want to hear it. So find ways that you can challenge yourself and gain the confidence in those areas that are shaky or even terrifying for you, because those are ways that you can also help to build your own brand. And if you are, almost used the wrong word, if you're terrible at writing or you think you're terrible at writing, you can learn to write better too. There are so many ways that you can gain confidence and gain skills. I say constantly I'm not a coder. I know that I'm intelligent enough you could teach me to code if that was what I wanted to learn. It isn't, you're all safe. But if I wanted to, I could, because I could overcome that fear of coding or that fear of if I make a mistake, it's not going to look right, it's not going to do. It's not an area that I want to pursue. But if I wanted to, I could find ways to push myself in that direction. It's why I built Hello Beautiful, right? Because I wanted to learn a little tiny bit of coding and understand how to put something together and then create something that was like Hello Dolly but wasn't Hello Dolly. And so I challenged myself to do that. And then, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I gave a talk on it for WordCamp Taipei during the pandemic, because nothing pushes you out of your comfort zone than doing something and then teaching other people who already know how to do it how you did it. So there you go. So find a way to push yourself through those shaky times. And then work on your elevator pitch. Man, that's a hard thing to do, right? If you don't know what an elevator pitch is, it's that 30 to 60 seconds when somebody says, so what do you do for a living? And you have to explain it in a way that makes sense and also doesn't bore them to tears. So for example, when I started working at Give and somebody said, so what do you do for a living? I said, well, I work in WordPress, and WordPress is a way that you build websites, but I work for a plugin developer, and plugins are things that actually add extra function to WordPress websites, and the eyes would glaze over, and I'm like, I'm not doing that very well. So now when people who aren't in tech say, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm in web tech marketing. And that's enough for them, right? But if I said to you all, I'm in web tech marketing, you'd be like, and? What does that mean? So figure out what your elevator pitch is for different audiences, both inside and outside the industry, so that when you sit down next to me at a WordCamp and I say, so what do you do with WordPress? You know what you want to say in a way that makes sense, but also doesn't make my eyes glaze over, right? I promise I'll try not to bore you too when you say, and what do you do? So, but practice it. I worked at that so that I would stop boring people about explaining what WordPress is and what plugins were, and then what Give did, which was to help raise money for those people, right? And so all of that to say, do a better job. Remember I said at the beginning, do as I say, not as I did? Please learn from that. Nobody wants you to explain what a plugin is. I know from experience. And then also, if you are a shy person, practice some small talk that will lead to deeper conversations. If you ask people yes or no questions, you will get yes or no answers. And that's where conversations stop. Instead of saying, do you work in WordPress? Say, I ask people, what do you do with WordPress? And if they say, oh, I'm a developer, I say, what kind of WordPress sites do you develop? Do you work for a big agency or are you a freelancer? And so you're able to ask good questions, get answers, ask deeper questions. But there's a skill that you develop to be able to understand how to master that, because sometimes talking to strangers is also fear-inducing, right? Especially if you are an introverted person. I'm not, but if you are, that's something that can be fearful too, talking to strangers, even if you have things in common, like attending a WordCamp. So if you can practice some of those things, just have that internal monologue, like, so when I sit down with people today, this is a good question to ask, not that. You can start to develop the skills to have deeper conversations, and when you have deep conversations with people, that's when they remember you, and being remembered is part of personal branding. And then I say, learn something new every day. If I had stopped learning when I first started building WordPress websites, I would still be freelancing and not be able to pay my own rent because I didn't know how much to charge. I was not necessarily a great designer at the beginning. I wasn't sure how to do the networking. And so all of these things that I've built over time is because I'm not afraid to learn. So I read blog posts that people write. I read newsletters that come. I don't read every newsletter. I'm not perfect, and I don't have 80 hours in every day. But I do read at least 2 to 3 newsletters a week, and I look at least 1 or 2 TED Talks a week. They have to be 20 minutes or less, or I will not have the time or the energy to pay attention. But I also watch everything on YouTube at 1.5 times the speed, so it goes faster. As long as they're not speaking fast like me, I can still understand it. Otherwise, they sound like chipmunks. But I watch 2 to 3 TED Talks, or I go on YouTube and I look for things that are educational. And so do I necessarily watch a TED Talk and then know everything I need about that subject? Of course not. But if I started to introduce to myself concepts that maybe I only understood at the surface or didn't even know about, absolutely. And some of my favorite TED Talks have nothing to do with tech at all, but help broaden my understanding of how to talk to people, about how the world works, and have a bigger and better understanding of who we are as people here on this planet. And so if any of that information, I love trivia, so if you ask me my favorite TED Talk, I will tell you it's the guy who teaches you how to use a paper towel after you wash your hands. If you haven't watched that one yet, I promise you will love it too. I learned that if you fold the paper towel in half, you don't have to use as many paper towels because there's this thing called interstitial space, and it absorbs more water. Like, I learned that there. I will bore you to death over lunch talking about it, but you will remember that I'm the girl who told you about paper towels the next time you go into the bathroom and have to pull a paper towel off the wall. All of those things, learning those things, sharing information helps move you forward as well. And then I'm going to be incredibly self-serving. This is a free site, wpspeakers.com. If you are a speaker or want to be a speaker, you can create a free profile over at wpspeakers.com. It gives you one more piece of web real estate to be found. It lets you tell everybody what your areas of expertise are, what are the kinds of things you want to be speaking about, and it gives you one more place to be found. You can include this profile anywhere you want. Similarly, I'm going to tell you about the WP World, which is not my project. That is Marcus Burnett's project. And if you haven't been familiar with the WP.world yet, you should. You should create a profile there. It is also free, and it is a way for people to see what WordCamps you've gone to, what WordCamps you're planning to go to, what did you do with those WordCamps you attended, you spoke, you volunteered, you organized, all of those different wonderful things. And it gives you an opportunity to learn about who are WordPressers near you, where you live, but also who's near where you're going, so that you can start to make connections with people like, oh my gosh, I didn't know so-and-so lived near New Jersey. I should give them a call when I'm there. You know, those kinds of things. I think that's my last slide. So, we're good. So that's how you can get in touch with me. I refuse to call it X or put the X up there, so you will always see the blue bird. On Twitter, I'm just at Michelle Ames. You can't really change your name there. All the links break to all the places you put it before. So I will forever on WordPress and Twitter be Michelle Ames. My email is michelle@stellarwp.com. You can find me at meetmichelle.online. Or, like I said, please don't judge it yet, but michelleforchetonline.com as well. So